Look at them. So blissfully ignorant.
Care to tell me what this is all about? Or would you rather save it for the council?
Silco isn't taking guests.
Not a problem. Wasn't here for him. Thought I might bend you here.
I don't think the system works.
How would you have it work?
That first clip is from the last season of the Clone Wars, and the second from episode 9 of Arcane. The third belongs to Attack of the Clones, and it's nowhere near as good. So why do these scenes work while this one has been memed for 2 decades? Because earthquakes, of course. This isn't going to be a perfect one-to-one comparison, but bear with me, I promise it makes sense when you know what I'm thinking. Imagine you're a developer, and you just got a major tract of land where you want to build a complex of buildings. They can be whatever size, shape, color, material, whatever you need for them to fit with each other and your vision. However, there's a complication. The land is known for experiencing earthquakes. This isn't a problem for you or your theoretical tenants. In fact, you've been counting on it this whole time. You're weird like that. You manage to construct the skeletons of a few buildings and you expect them to hold up, but then the first earthquake rips through and brings them one and all to the ground. You, frustrated and out of pocket for all the wasted time and effort, go back to the drawing board to redesign the entire complex instead of fixing the foundation. If it wasn't apparent, the development complex idea is an analogy for a story. Think of a building like a scene and an earthquake like a story event, in which case the dialogue is the building's skeleton. This might be a slightly controversial take because a lot of writing experts will tell you that dialogue is the last thing you need to worry about. Treat this implication like I do a court summons for planting a glitter bomb in the bathroom of my local Starbucks and ignore it. The dialogue is your main mechanism for propelling the story forward. 99% of the time we humans want to get something done, we don't fight our way through it, we talk. Why would it be any different for made-up people? It's also your biggest way of relaying information to your audience because, spoiler, most of them aren't paying attention to the color theory behind a character's eyes when there's more obvious things to focus on. Therefore, you should take great care to make sure your dialogue is up to snuff. Don't know how? Don't worry, that's what I'm here for. Let's revisit the building analogy. An earthquake is a plot point that wants to shake up the order of things and move something in the narrative forward, but if your dialogue sucks, it'll take any sense of structure out of the scene and the hypothetical building. If the dialogue is meant to hold the scene together, you want it to be strong. Ergo, you should make it sound super smooth, right? Alas, it's not so simple. That'd be like choosing a nice color of paint for your building and trusting that to carry it through the earthquake. The big picture in both of these scenarios is structural integrity. If the core of your creation is solid, the surface elements will take surprisingly little consideration. Expert you melodious maestro, says the wind. How do you construct the core of meaningful dialogue? Well, Helpful Breeze, you do it with 4 pillars that act as the foundation the building stands on. Goal, context, lens, and reasonability. The goal is as simple as what you want to accomplish with the scene. If there's not a piece of character work you want to achieve or a plot point you want to develop or something, then the scene is unnecessary and you need to axe it. I know, we all have our pet moments that we can't fit in anywhere else in the story we're telling, but such are the risks of the trade. Do it. Knowing what a scene should accomplish will help you reverse engineer it to be a means to that end, but you also need to know the scene's context. In this case, I'm not strictly using context to refer to the background of what's happening in the story, although that's definitely an important part of it. If you've done your job, the audience will know everything they need to know up to this point. Rather, I mean the context of what one character knows versus what another knows. You'd probably question it if the lawyer in Jurassic Park started talking about DNA sequencing, for instance, or pre-explosion Harvey Dent magically knew about the Joker's swap scheme with him and Rachel in The Dark Knight. That may sound obvious to you now, but you'd be surprised how difficult it is to keep everything straight when you're actually sitting with the page and you need to get a piece of information across so you can move on to the scene that popped into your head and inspired the whole project. Make sure that your dialogue reflects not only the urgency or lack thereof in a situation, but the knowledge base of the respective characters in it. Lens, of course, refers to the type you use on a sniper rifle to hit your insurance agent with a barrage of paintballs after he denies your claim for jumping off your roof on a $10 bet. Lens means the way a character views the world, and since you more than likely have multiple characters in a scene, you have multiple conflicting lenses you need to keep in mind. Despair not. This is actually a good thing, because it allows for conflict within the scene itself, and that's what we're aiming for. Conflict doesn't have to mean punchy-punchy. It can be an argument about what flavor of ice cream is best for all I care. It just has to be something requiring resolution by the end of the story. The lens of Jack Sparrow is rum-loving, responsibility-eluding, and pro-piracy. Cutler Beckett's is order-loving, power-seeking, and anti-piracy. Combining these in the scene where Beckett asks Jack to spill the beans about the Brethren Court, you can tell that Beckett is desperate beneath a cool, collected exterior. Jack himself spends most of the scene doing anything except directly answering Beckett's questions, which is both inline and hilarious to watch. Reasonability is something of an X factor for dialogue. It's hard to nail down the specifics of how it works, but you can just feel when it's off. This, as the name implies, is the plausibility of a line. It's one thing to have a reference to magic in a story about magic, quite another to have a convoluted reference in an otherwise simple story where the mechanics of the exact magic itself isn't the focal point. Then there's dialogue that just sounds dumb. You know it when you hear it.
I don't like Sam.
Mostly because you can't help laughing at it. A good rule of thumb to gauge the reasonability of your dialogue would be to read it out loud. This helps you determine which parts sound clunkier or are more difficult to pronounce smoothly. Reasonability is a litmus test for a scene. If it comes across as silly when you hear it with your own 2 ears, something deeper is misfiring and you'll want to fix it before you move on. Once you've got your 4 pillars down, you'll find that the dialogue flows naturally and that it sounds good. This is why I say you can use this framework with minimal effort. All you're really doing is bearing in mind things that you've hopefully already set up. They're what I would define as the most crucial things to keep in mind while writing dialogue, but there are lots of other angles to mix in. Some things that are helpful to remember beyond the 4 pillars that I won't be delving into for the rest of this video. Everybody has an aim in every conversation, even if that aim is just to make the other person laugh. There's almost no chance of them saying it outright, however, because once they do, there's nothing left to talk about. When you encounter this as a writer, you can either scrap the scene, redo it, or take the conversation into a new direction. This can help you kill several birds with one stone if you know what you're doing. If a scene contains major character growth, that character won't randomly start speaking like a different person. Just because Toph grew tight with the gang doesn't mean she ever stopped poking fun at them. Notice the other side of the context coin and remember characters' relationships with one another. Elrond was far harsher on Aragorn than on Frodo, but then Frodo wasn't ostensibly trying to rob his daughter of immortality. Nobody, and I mean nobody, makes meta references. We've all seen that moment where a character says something like, "We shouldn't split the party, that's how people die in horror movies." Or, "I'm having trouble with my third act. What if I made a joke about that in the story?" I don't talk like this in real life. Do you? I mean, if you do, that's fine, but fiction has to earn every second of audience attention, and fourth wall gags just don't hit the mark most of the time. Unless you live in the Warner Tower, please knock it off and focus on telling a good story. I'm begging on bended knee. Okay, now that we theoretically know how to create functional dialogue, let's do a case study on the scenes from the intro. For copyright reasons, I won't be able to play any of them in full, but I will be breaking down each one in turn nevertheless. I encourage you to watch them on your own time to see what I'm talking about in action. First up is going to be the Clone Wars scene. Before we do anything else, let's identify the 4 pillars in this scene. Filoni's goal was a combination of getting Maul arrested so Ahsoka can later use him as a distraction to escape the clones, and to put the idea about Anakin becoming Darth Vader into her ear. Ergo, this is what the dialogue gears toward. The context of the scene is that Maul knows about Palpatine manipulating Anakin and Ahsoka doesn't, so his aim is to impress this concept upon her and get her to join him to go after Sidious directly. Neither of them, however, know about Order 66 at this point, so there should be exactly 0 references to it except unwittingly, if that. Now, how about lenses? Ahsoka and Maul both believe that the Jedi and the Sith are corrupt, albeit for different reasons, which establishes a personal connection between the two and allows for her hearing him out. However, Ahsoka believes at a base level that Anakin could never be responsible for the type of things that Maul's predicting, whereas Maul takes a much more pragmatic, results-based approach to life, and certainly to individuals he already tried to mow down as kids. As for reasonability, it gets a pass. Maul is well known at this point for making long-winded soliloquies, and that's what he delivers. Ahsoka's lines are much more basic, but they don't need to be fancy to deliver her ideas, and in fact, would probably have detracted from Maul's if they were. With all that in mind, what does the scene look like? It kicks off with Maul, in true fashion, making a pithy remark. He then goes on to talk about how they were both failed by their respective orders, and Ahsoka, unswayed, declares that she's here to arrest him. Maul, however, has other intentions and starts waxing about how the Republic has folded in on itself. In her heart of hearts, Ahsoka knows that he's right, but can't quite admit it to herself yet. Just enough of this sentiment bleeds through for her to admit that the Sith are controlling the Senate, and she makes a direct plea to Maul to help her stop Palpatine, quote, before it's too late. This is where the scene earns its S-tier ranking, because Maul loses it and spouts some of the most profound, eloquent lines in all of Star Wars.
Too late? For what? The Republic to fall? It already has, and you just can't see it. There is no justice, no law, no order, except for the one that will replace it. The time of the Jedi has passed. They cannot defeat Sidious, but together, you and I can.
This passage alone distills the entire idea of the scene perfectly. It's the point where Maul lays bare his intentions and, more importantly, where Ahsoka begins to consider shifting her stance. Her only holdout is what Maul has planned for Anakin, and once he obliges, it devolves into a lightsaber fight ending in Maul's arrest. Goals accomplished.